Thank you, Shobhagat. I know Vice Chairman has to leave, so I could just invite you if you have any questions or comments or observations. So, yeah,
I'll ask a question. No, I mean, what is your explanation for why so many don't use toilet when it is there? I mean, you raised the question, but didn't attempt an answer.
Yes, so there are a few surveys that are looking at, at why that fallback has happened, slipback has happened. Some look at input characteristics which are physical, water, not finished. The toilet wasn't actually constructed fully. A few of these issues, but there is also a chunk that looks at the behavioral issues. So there seems to be, from what we are seeing come out, that there are some preferences still for people going out to defecate in the open, and these are to be understood better. But surely there is the impact on health of defecating in the open as a community. The whole community gets affected. That understanding needs to be deepened, for sure, in these communities. So there is a behavioral and awareness, strong emerging, understanding around that needs to be.
With our guests from West Bengal, by the way, congratulations for great grand success. But how did you manage to get them all start using the toilets after they were constructed? I mean, your success seems to be so different from the aggregate data that were presented.
Sir, our field level data returned different kinds of answers. So perhaps not to be simplified in that manner. So what we found is that a certain section of people were not using it because, as we have already heard, the toilet was not completed. So since our feedback mechanism, as we have told, is wonderful, there are ways, and there is a beauty of a negative press also. They got back to us, and there is a public validation above all these levels of validation. So public got back to us, and we had a helpline, and there are ways we can track. So we got to know which are the toilets that were not completed. Secondly, we again got to know who are the families who had a natural tendency to defecate in the open, because they put up a list of reasons. There is too many members in the family, one. There is a natural discomfort in using the toilet. So that we tackled through, one, the Para Najedari Committee, which is a sort of a vigilante committee made up of people of that locality, and we were surprised to find the kind of responses from people, old people, who are not employed but no need to look for means of food and livelihood. We found wonderful support from them, retired people, then widows. They got into service, and we have wonderful examples, and we made stories out of them, that how they were the ones who got back to us and told people that this is not to be done. Secondly, we were aware of the fact that the slippages do happen, and so what we did is like controlling it through, one, continuation of this Najedari, one, and ensuring. And another problem is like we don't have that problem per se, because Nadia district by that way is well endowed with water. So problem with those things, water does not happen there, and we are ensuring the presence of water is there, and we do have enough supply of water in that sense.
If I may just sort of, push you on the Vice Chairman's question, both Shubhagato and you. In your story, there were sort of three different components that made it success. I mean, you have many factors, political, administration, but structurally, right? So one is the supply side problem. You build the toilets and you have the water, right? The second is, in a sense, behavioral characteristics that you talked about. And then the third is these accountability mechanisms. I mean, what you're describing is a kind of vigilante group that's basically monitoring. One guy was walking with a stick in his hand, right? If you were to take a call, and since we are in the NITI Aayog, which is the most important? I mean, will the supply side get you 50% of the way or 70% of the way? How would you in a sense, characterize that balance? Because I suspect that that monitoring part that you got in West Bengal is not easy to replicate in almost any other state. If you have any thoughts on that.
A mere construction of toilet will not ensure the behavioral change, because construction of toilet is a totally civil work that can be done by anybody. So, and construction of toilet is not the only sole solution for getting the ODF status. So, when we achieved our target, physical target, then we gradually moved for this kind of vigilance or behavioral change by creating some pressure groups. Najaddari committees are one of the pressure groups who are the inbuilt in that particular area, and also we created some momentum through the local agents or local stakeholders that they will continue the sustainability of the project. Until and unless community understands the sustainability factor, the project will not be remain successful. So we, as per your question, our answer is that 20% construction and the rest is upon to the total credibility or the sustainability of the project.
I'd like to slightly add to what Obiru has said. My understanding is, and perhaps I don't have enough data to be sure on that, while toilets were made and significant number of toilets were made, pressure groups came up on their own. By that, what I'm saying is that if there are 2 paras nearby and we have made the toilets and ensured the use of toilet in one of them, what happens is that when we went back and there was complaint that there is open defecation still, the second para became a pressure group on the first. Yeah. So that kind of pressure group replicates itself. So response comes from the field itself and without external inputs like we want to maintain. That will be there, but we have seen the emergence of pressure groups from within. Yeah. So people don't want an unclean neighborhood. That kind of understanding we have reached somehow by constructing and by making behavior changes.
I want to ask the Nadia team. This is a question I ask everybody who tells me about a good thing that has happened in a district or an area or a state. When you will move from this assignment to some other assignment, what would you rate this achievement on a scale of 1 to 10 on replicability in other parts of the district, other parts of the state? That's my first question. On the same scale, much less scalable. Can you scale it up to can I tell all the 2.5 lakh gram panchayats through Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation, please do the Nadia model, there is no other way. Can I say that? On a scale, how would you rate that? Replicability, scalability, and suppose you go back there as district magistrate, I hope you will, or as commissioner. What would you like to see in 2019? When supposedly that one-time exercise is supposed to end for the whole country on 2019, 2nd October. What would you like to see? Both of you, actually.
Very difficult to answer, madam, but what we have seen, my rating comes, the replicability I'll come later. What we have done is is unprecedented. We haven't done, and none of us had, and he'll attest perhaps, that none of us have seen government officials waking up in the morning at 4:30 and taking 2 teams of Najaddari committee and then ensuring and then coming back and somehow managing to attending office. So that way it was a fulfilling exercise this last 2 years. It was a very fulfilling exercise. That way, we come to the second part of the question about replicability. A lot of variables are there, meaning administrative will and political will, and a lot of external factors, meaning presence of water and etc. etc. But still this happens to be, I mean, I can only say, since we are the only one who had made a claim and subjected our claim to public validation, I think we are in that India we are old enough to say that it is a sustainable way of doing it.
And replicability, madam, if you see our total estimate of the planning, we already did it. The entire estimate designed by us of the toilet, I say the physical estimate, that is replicable in all sense. And the total process of construction is more or less okay at par with the other parts of our district as well as other part of our country. But what we did innovatively, that is the community mobilization. And I think in every community there is school children, there is women SHGs, there is faith leaders. So mobilization was the drive of our district magistrate, and this can be replicable in any part of our state, we guess, madam.
So on 2019, 2nd October, World Maker Speech, what will you like to see?
Continuous of the use of
I think, madam, we will be able to sustain the changes already made in our district, madam.
What we try to hammer down in every meeting, madam, that's what we try to hammer down in every meeting of ours, that let's not subject ourselves to another declaration. Yeah. We have made enough declarations, let's not subject ourselves, and let's not it be so person-centric or that way. So we try to ensure, and that's why we opened up to public validation. They give us news, and we'll take corrective measures within 2 days. Give us news who is defecating, who has not got a toilet, and I will acknowledge we are still getting 1 or 2 news in a time or so, and we are definitely taking efforts to correct that.
We have lots of, I think, hands here. So if I can just ask you to make your comments or questions sort of brief. So I've been taking note. Partho, if you want to give up, okay. Sir, please, I'll come down to you.
Yeah, I am Ashok Jain. I just have first of all, I congratulate you for making your district ODF. But one question which Rajshri Mitra I have with you, because you are the youngest in the field now. Now you have given a lot of steps for the differentiators, which many of the states or the districts do follow. What I just want to ask you is that what's your gut feeling that 1 or 2 important factors which have really made a difference in Nadia vis-a-vis the districts in West Bengal itself?
There are 2-3 points to this. One is definitely the way we approach the whole problem. And it was demanded from us, and we did that. We made a personal touch to whatever we did. So it is not the usual rung of the day administration. So we didn't do that, and it was not expected from us, so we didn't do it. So we tried to ensure whatever small bits we do, we ensure that there is nothing left. Second is the community itself. Somehow we found it wonderfully accepting the program and coming forward. That has 2-3 angles to it. A lot of people, because of proximity with Bangladesh, and Bangladesh has lesser number of open defecators, it might be one of the things that people there has a tendency to contain open defecation. And once given the means, we gave them the means, we sensitize them. So that's what I'm taking is saying that there are natural generation of pressure groups from within the society, which we found was a great thing.
I'm Harsh. I'm a lawyer and economist, and I've been doing cleaning, trying to clean the neighborhood. My question is that with this project of making toilets, did it affect the general level of cleanliness around? Their sense towards like the dirt or littering or the other behavior towards dirt? Did you see any change in that?
It's both a yes and no. There were areas, and there are areas which remain to be clean, and which in which the cleanliness quotient has improved over these 2 years, and it actually did. And there are areas which perhaps, like, it needs to be overhauled in a greater sense. The municipal dumping ground continues to be dirty, and this has nothing to do with how we manage our SBMG and contain defecation. So partially yes, and the schools continue to be, the schools remain much more cleaner than they used to be. The dumping ground remains as they were. So it's, I'm very clear, yes and no.
My name is Ashish and I work at Rice Institute, authors of the squad survey, which Shugato mentioned. I have a bunch of clarificatory questions. I guess I can ask, very small. Okay, so we've seen a preference for large pits in India compared to Bangladesh. I want to ask you, did you find people wanted to construct larger pits than what the government was providing? And what was the sense about cleaning once these pits fill up? What are people going to do? What were the anxieties of people in Nadia? The other is, you mentioned about use. Is there a monitoring of the use? Like, you did an access survey and 99.8% of people had constructed toilets. What percentage of those were being used or are being used now? The other is, you sort of mentioned that it's nearer, it's a bordering district to Bangladesh. Obviously, there's some effect of that. There's also, we've seen an increase, Muslims are more likely to use toilets in India. What is the proportion of Muslims in your district? And then, you spent a lot of money on behavior change activities. Now, the behavior change component in the Swachh Bharat mission is actually very small. Did you feel a fund crunch for IC activities? Is that why you had to go to other sponsors? And then, do people use rings or do they use bricks? Okay. And if they use rings, do they spend more from their own pocket? Yeah, those are my questions.
By the PEAT technology you asked for, we are using the PEAT ring technology. That is double leach PEAT technology. That is the latest technology, low-cost sanitation, approved by UNICEF, and that has been widely accepted in our district because the use of brick in the chambers will be a costly affair. So we are using the rings instead of brick, and also this saves the time. And another question was your monitoring, and regarding the percentage of present use. Taru report was revealed only the last week of April. So that was 99.8%. I think that has been escalated, not gone down. So this is the same status. We are, use. And they have also mentioned that 100% of our school toilets schools have their toilet facility. That is also reported by Taru, but it has not been reflected here. Another question was that regarding the behavioral change. Behavioral change, you are rightly pointed out that we offered the CSR partners to sponsor some of our programs, like the mini marathon, like the hot air balloon, because there is absolutely fund crunch for this behavioral process. But there is provision is SBMG to tie up with the CSR partners. So we use the avenue so that we can incur the expenditure from the CSR contributions.
I'm Sunil Pandey and I work with the Energy and Resources Institute. Often we see in West Bengal where water is not a problem, still heavy dependence on water bodies for, say, bathing, for washing utensils and all that, sometimes for cooking also. So do you think that in future, does this have any linkage with overall sanitation program which you would look at in future?
Yeah, I'm Anjali from CPR. And my question is, you mentioned that between the supply constraints and once they were removed and the vigilante groups or pressure groups that developed, there didn't seem to be a space for awareness that you were able to create in the community for that to actually translate into actual toilet construction and usage. You said that most of the usage was either because 20% was because infrastructure related constraints were removed and the rest was because of the pressure groups. So I want to know why do you think that was, even though you said that women did come to understand the negative health impacts. And my second question is that a little more mundane, but I think important, that how deeply were the DM and STM involved in actually visiting the Gram Sabhas or village levels?
Hello, I'm a lawyer and policy advisor and I focus a fair bit on behavioral public policy. And I wanted to talk about the point in the squat survey where they talk about how a lot of people prefer defecating in the open because it's pleasant and comfortable. And if you look at the pictures of the toilets that you've shown, possibly due to cost constraints, they're quite small, they're fairly narrow, and they're not very spacious and well constructed. So do you think if you had more funds to build larger, more airy toilets, would that perhaps be a factor you think in encouraging people to use them better?
Yeah, so I'll start with your question, and which has a tangential relation with your question. So the thing is, what we have seen that it has some reflection on how airy or how big it is, because we have found responses like it's claustrophobic inside there. So it's there. But our primary finding was, and during my field visits, I have found out that one of the reasons why toilets fail to be in use and fall into disuse is because they are not completed in the first place, which is very relevant, and it was mentioned by you. It was not completed. So minor repairings, minor things, because why it gets done? Because it is made in batches, 10, 15 toilets at the same time, and then there is always a chance of people looking through it and missing a point. So what happens because of that minute thing, our toilets are not functional, and therefore naturally it will not be in use. It's a very simple thing. So I think it is one of the major reasons why people stop using toilets. Second is proximity to water. Yes, I don't think that it's a very big problem, because what used to happen is, like, even where we have constructed toilets, in some households what was happening was that there used to be a primitive toilet which was not scientific and without a siphon. So there was a pit and two planks of wood, and people would squat and defecate. So, but that requires water. So my point is, even in households where there were no scientific toilets, people used to use water. So I don't think that is a very concrete problem for Nadia per se.
Another thing. Another question you asked for.
About, you know, whether awareness that women you felt did, I mean, whether women's understanding of health impacts had any role to play in use of toilets, because you didn't seem to think it did. And secondly, whether involvement of senior officers actually motivated the community in any way.
Women were our ambassadors. That was the main, they were the change agents of our movement. We initially targeted the women groups who are the mere self-help groups habituated in the craft or design, etc. We converted them into the sanitary marts, who are actually the civil contractors. By these, we targeted to achieve two goals. First of all, the women, being mother, being daughter, they are more effective to disseminate the message of sanitation. And secondly, by giving alternative employment to them, we are giving another way to have some respect or some generation of their income. So women are the main change agent of our movement. Secondly, you said that the visit of district high-level officials. Please believe us that for the last 2 months, we are waking up in the morning at 4 or 4:30 p.m. and we are roaming at all over our district, in the nook and corner of our district, so that we get in touch with the Paranajadar not to look on the defecators, habitual defecators. That is not our purpose. Our purpose is to get in touch with the Paranajadari committees who have to vigil in the morning time, so that we can encourage them. That was our main target. For the last, for March, April and the middle of May, we all, starting from the district magistrate to the block development officers, they used to wake up at the 4 or 4:30 and roam in the entire district.
Let me just add, what used to happen is that, like any other program, initially these Paranajadar committees were organized because people are coming. They were organized because somebody is coming to look after them. But that became habit. Once our visits became repetitive, there was nothing to hide from us, and the visits became real, And the vigilante groups also became very real. I mean, they were not intended to be paraded before us for some time. So it became very real over time.
Okay, we have lots of hands. Yeah, why don't we begin?
Thank you for your presentation. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how you were initially able to motivate these local level sanitation messengers. You mentioned that Anganwadis and Ashas and ration shopkeepers were all sort of getting involved in enforcing, latrine use. So how did you initially get them motivated and then eventually hold them accountable for their involvement?
I'm Neeraj Tiwari, consultant, Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. I have one question. Do you have any future plan for the ensuring monitoring of uses? Number one. Number two is there any incentive was also designed for the local level workers? Okay. Thank you.
I'm here representing a civil society organization, CUTS, from Jaipur. And what I did not see in the presentation, maybe I missed on it, unless we talk about faith-based organizations as CVOs. What role did civil society organizations play in Nadia district? And also a very basic question, the presentation was based on the assumption that the toilets were created. A very basic question about the cost of construction of a toilet. I'd like to get to know that, please. Thank you.
I guess my question is about, at any point in your process, were you ever thinking about the actual design of the toilet itself and giving that feedback back to the manufacturers? I mean, I understand that there's technical specifications, but what about the user experience of the actual toilet? And were there any changes or innovations made in that respect?
I'll start with the last one. That's being regarding the design of the toilets. Yes. And which is relating to another question that we got is like there was a tendency to make the pits bigger. There was actually a tendency to make the pits bigger, which we had to intervene at that level. And because we had, again, a very good feedback mechanism, we intervened and we said, no, it can't be more than 4 feet. Because if it goes down, then it affects the water level, and we don't want to do that. So we had to repeatedly get back to the manufacturer and incentivizing and pressurizing not to give in to the consumer demand. So that was there. That was very much there. And regarding the civil society organizations, what happened was that we did take the help of all the civil society organizations. We sometimes use them as program implementators because Red Cross Society was one of the sanitary marts which got into this business. Then RSM, also all the rural sanitary marts, basically is then CSPs. CSPs sometimes part of the sanitary marts, sometimes as individual capacity as CSP. So a single person has many roles in the rural society. That's what we have gotten to know, and that's how we have utilized their services in the process. Then cost of toilet, we already divulged that it was 10,000, and we would like to acknowledge that Convergence was for the time when we did not have the fund, but Convergence is a little bit slow, a tad slow than SBM. When it's the clear money, you build it and you get the money. So obviously we can show the differences in the curves. It was shooting up further in 2014-15, and maybe you can respond to the rest of them.
Okay, coming to the next questions. Future of the ensuring of the usage that asked by some people. We already mentioned that we don't intend to construction of mere toilets. We were now supposed to hand over the ownership rights to the society so that they can be assured or they can be owners of their own rights. Administration, from administration, we can only ask the sanitary marts to build the toilets, but the usage is another thing, another story. So we have tried to impart several mechanisms to ensure the usage, and one of the process we also already mentioned that the last step was the intrusion of the Paranojadari committees or the local Nigrani committees, who are main responsible agents for the usage. And in our last effort, around 99.8% was reported due to sole efforts of these PNCs helped by the administration.
I might like to add that we sometimes do employ very funny mechanisms. We tell that you give us the number, 6 people who are defecating in open, we'll give you a mobile phone. So we have gotten down to that extent. And we did get responses, and people were much disappointed when they didn't get the mobile phone in actuality. So, so it happens that way.
Another question was that incentive for the local people. We have to ramify our ground level staffs, because being in the consequent upon our existing staff strength, these projects could not be managed. So we we hired some facilitators at the Gram Panchayat levels. They were hired on basis of one kind of incentives. So presently we are giving them 10 rupees for every toilet. That means from the starting to construction and photo uploading, they are getting 10 rupees for each toilet. That is a handsome amount for all the facilitators in part GP. So it was a must-do step for from us, because in our Gram Panchayat level there is a scarcity of existing staffs. Another thing is the ownership of the community. Presently, the community has to provide beneficiaries by 900 for each toilet, because as it is restricted by the present guideline of SBMG, we cannot charge more than that. But if the beneficiary intends to invest more on that toilet for better sustainability or better configuration, they can invest it. That is their own business with the sanitary mart. But our concern is that 900 rupees is to be given by the community, by the beneficiary, as the cost of their ownership. And last question was the solid management that is coming out. You said that the water coming out from the toilet, but in our technology there is no such slippage from our pits. There is no leak out from the liquid waste from the toilet.
Okay. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. There was a bunch of questions from the social media, and I'm glad to say that actually most of those questions have been sort of covered in the questions asked here, so that we don't have to go into them. What I'll do is just invite the panelists to perhaps give us a couple of closing thoughts, very briefly, 1 or 2 sentences, beginning with Shubhagato. And then I'll request Srimati Khullar to sort of bring the proceedings to a close, as it were.
Thanks. I'll take the question of 2019 and try and say that means it will be lovely to see Nadia, people in Nadia building their own toilets without any government program support, on their own motivation, and that's, I think, the target we should aim towards. Yeah. It means without a program and all the vigilante, that the people themselves realize that and are building their own toilets in the future after.
Okay. Mr. Mitra, anything you want to add as a...
Nothing much I have said, too much perhaps. So I would only like to say that I think that we have spent the last 2 years very fruitfully and extracted equally fruitful response from the people. And that happens to be a very pleasing thought.
No. Okay, sir. That is the same thought for me also.
Thank you.
Indeed, if this is the tone and tenor, I think we really have Nadia to thank for this enthusiasm that this series seems to have evoked. Thank you all for coming. From my side, the reason for initiating this was purely selfish, because from the government side, there seems to be a reasonable assumption that on October 2, 2019, our gift to the Mahatma on his 150th birth anniversary will be a Swachh Bharat. Now, but in government, of course, we are always ready for criticism because someone will say, but we are not Swachh, but you have not done anything. So the main reason for opening this to everyone is to say that this is not a government issue. This is a country issue. And the question which the Vice Chairman started with, that if there is access to a toilet, why do people still prefer to defecate in the open? I heard two responses. I just want to touch upon it because it speaks directly into where we are going from here in the series. One of them seems to be very difficult because we are 1 billion plus people. Each one has a different reason for doing something their own way. So that's really not something I can measure across this country. If on 2019 somebody stands up on a podium and say, but see, nor can I replicate what Nadia has done so brilliantly, the Vigilante committees, and I think Dr. Mehta pointed that out very quickly. What seems to be coming out, which was hinted at by Rajshri yourself, was the decline in waterborne diseases. And this is within 2 years. That is something which is just not being internalized, whether it is city pollution or whether it is garbage dumping in landfills. It's not getting across to us that as a country, we are paying a collective price for individual deviant behavior. So that's something which is very difficult to catch in programs, especially when you're starting from uneven basis, where no access to toilets to 100% access to toilets. The second part I just want to flag here is, which is not coming out clearly in our Abhiyan statements, even in our messaging across the board, is that there are two separate goals. One is ODF communities, open defecation-free communities, which we are talking about today. The other is very loosely worded, not very happily, zero waste. That is really a whole world in itself, where from rural to urban there is a continuum, but was also pointed out by Nadia and by Shubhagato, that dumping, we do not have land to dump our garbage, full stop. So what are we going to do about it? We can't ship our garbage to the rest of the world. We cannot. So these are the two major issues which are coming out, and for going forward, our concern will be to sensitize ourselves mainly, all of us, into what kind of realistic appraisals can we have of where we were on the day we started in 2014 and where we end up in 2019. It has to be fairly realistic, fairly easy to apply, and for people who get up every morning at 4:30 and walk around the field, it's really not a sustainable issue to do this for 5 years, even if it is extremely successful, not for anybody. So really what Shubhagato said, that how do we, that, what is a cliched self-help group book, highly effective, 8 habits of highly effective people or some such thing. Something like that. When does behavior change become a habit? How does it become as something all of you probably work on or think about? But we are not finding it very easy. But for those of them in the field, the challenge in itself is to jump the first, is to provide access. And that, I think, we again pay great tribute to all of you for doing this. And I think going forward, we will try and work on some kind of framework, which I think we can then try and see if it is acceptable to all governments at least, if not to researchers and others. So that we know we started from base A and we are ending at base A2 in 2019. Thank you all very much, and thank you CPR for doing this for us.